my brown-eyed son. You used to crawl, but now you run. You started off on a road half dark, and the river curled into a question mark. Please sleep on diamond beaches, dear, and drink from prison streams so clear. You don't have to be rich to get around. There are mansions growing out of the ground. Days go by, get out and see the world. Days go by, get out and see the world with your own eyes. Humanity took you far from home, pushed you out of your comfort zone. There are kids out there with war paint on, and hearts break like crayons. Before you left, the world was small. Now the hills are bleeding like waterfalls. There are a lot of bad things that are buried shallow, and cries for help with no echo. Days go by, get out and see the world. Days go by, get out and see the world with your own eyes. It's hard to see what you're going through. Just no one can beat up on you. You'll spend some time in the waiting place, and the purest things may leave no trace. Go up the mountain top and shine. I reflected on my long decline. I've gathered sunsets in my prime. Now I'm planting trees I'll never climb. Days go by, get out and see the world. Days go by, get out and see the world with your own eyes. Your own eyes.
Hey everybody, Coach Stefan, Rudolph coming to you from beautiful Escondido, California, out here from our Healthy Epilepsy group here on Facebook. And it's a wonderful time, a wonderful event here. Very privileged to be with these wonderful ladies from all over the world, I would say. I guess I can say that because we're here in America. We're here also coming from Canada. And I wanted to introduce them little by little because Liz Nichols, this information. This information here that you see about Liz, Stacy Chillemi, and then we have our new lady Sue. She's with us as well, and we have a great introduction with Sue because she has got a wonderful book that really changed my life. I had brain surgery. What's your excuse? And I read that. And I read that in 2005, so I'm very excited to introduce everyone here. And Liz, take it away and tell us what you got.
Well, hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm totally excited too. This is amazing. I'm glad the four of us could come together. So my name is Liz Nichols. I'm from Canada. And what I do is I got epilepsy 21. And what I do is I provide coaching for women with epilepsy. Back to you, Stefan.
Wonderful. And take it away for Stacy. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know we've had a few interviews as well. It's wonderful. I'm just very excited because we're connecting the dots of thoughts, I call it. And all these books that we have, you have the most books. You just came out with one. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your new book.
Well, I developed epilepsy at the age of 5 through it started out as a little virus, and then it had traveled to my brain. I had encephalitis, and I developed scar tissue. To this day, they can't find the scar tissue, but it caused me to have epilepsy. And I went through a life, living a life as a roller coaster ride. But what I did was I pulled through it. And, I decided, through a lot of things that happened in my life, that my passion and my true destiny in life was to help others. So I am an author, a keynote speaker, and I do coaching, helping people with epilepsy and also helping people with other disabilities and illnesses to show them how to live a happy, healthy, and productive lifestyle.
I love it. I'm reading your book right now that you sent over. And you have so much information. I want everybody to check out our website right here. I'll put it on there. And Susie Becker, your book, once again, changed my life. In 2005, I started having seizures big time. I had 2 epileptic car accidents, lost everything, divorced, living with my parents at 34 years old. And I got your book and I read it and I was like, yeah, what is my excuse? I had brain surgery. What's your excuse? So I had to start taking on a more positive thinking, with Wayne Dyer and other authors. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart from 2007, my brain surgery. So tell us about yourself, Susie, and your book and what you're doing for others.
Sure. Well, I mean, that book has been, I wrote and illustrated the international bestseller, All I Need to Know I Learned from My Cat, which sold over 2 million copies. But the brain book is a book that I hear from people now, it's been out a while, maybe, every other week. And it makes me, I wrote it, so I wanted people to feel like they weren't alone going through that experience. And it's been amazing that it's connected me, with you, Stefan, and now with the 2 of you. So I'm an author, illustrator, cartoonist, and I have 11 published titles out. They're all illustrated, primarily humor, and I have found myself at the leading edge of something called graphic medicine, and that is a creation of personal narratives or stories about caregiving, illness, health, and recovery. And I do workshops and presentations of that. I just did my first school visit and worked with social emotional learning with 3rd and 4th graders using the same stuff. And the amazing thing, for a long time I gave workshops on memoir writing, and I still do, and art journaling and things. But with this, you see the transformation in people in their writing their stories and reframing them and gaining some power over situations where we feel out of control and powerless. So that's been a lot of what I'm doing.
Wow, I didn't know all that. I thought you just had one book. You're amazing.
Yeah.
Liz, take it away. What do you have to add with all this?
Again, I'm so excited that we've all come together. I honestly, when I got epilepsy at 21, there wasn't anybody I knew that had it. There was no resources. I went through it alone with nobody wanting to talk about it. And I just love that we're actually all talking about it now, because, things like people would say, oh, she's a nice girl, but she has epilepsy. Or, people would always say, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. So me being a little bit of a rebel went, well, if you tell me all the things I can't do, what about all the things I can do? And growing up, a lot of it was like, don't talk about it. And I'm like, I'm talking about it, right? So everybody goes, you built a business around supporting other people with epilepsy. That's not very glamorous. And I'm like, right? So my whole thing in life is to have resources to help others that have epilepsy and have gone through the trials we've all gone through, because it's not an easy journey, that's for sure. And I think we can all agree with that. And I think it's super important that we do open the conversations and talk about it. And having all these speakers and authors on this call is amazing. And all these resources out there, because what is it? 50 million people in the world have it? I think that was the last. Yeah, I've seen 65 million, but I think the the WHO organization said it's 50
I think it's
million.
about 50 million worldwide. And I think in the United States, I think we have about at least 4 or 5 million people that have epilepsy. I think it's 4 million that have epilepsy.
Wow.
Shoot, I'm going to get more copies of that book out there. No, I wanted to interrupt just because I'm getting little flashing things on my computer. I unfortunately have come to this meeting in a car dealership because I have a flat tire and my laptop battery is running low. So at some point, if I disappear, it's not for anything that happened in the conversation. So I'm going to put that out there.
It's a little bit like life. Sometimes our battery just dies and we got to reset it. And come back,
That's right.
There you go.
But you know what? That's the thing. That's life. It happens, right?
Yeah.
And we just have to make the best of it. So let's hope your battery stays running for a while longer. Stefan, you haven't really talked very much about yourself.
Well, I reset my mind and reset my life. And it's so interesting that Susie mentioned this about, I don't have epilepsy, I have seizures. And it started making me think about this because maybe if other people watched the video, just this past February, I lost my driver's license because I went through a doctor back in October I did not want to get the vaccine, just a personal decision because I had epilepsy, I had brain surgery, and the doctors wouldn't do it. And then they said, you have to go to a specialist. So I went to a neurologist. I told the neurologist, I showed up and told my whole story, just like I had brain surgery and then I had seizures again and I was drinking and blah, blah, blah. And then I stopped drinking and the seizures went away. And he said, well, what medication are you on? I said, I'm not. Been medication free for 10 years. He just looked at me like, what's going on? And he's typing away and he put it all in the system. He goes, well, we want to have an EEG. And as you know, epileptics out there, the EEG is the testing. They put all the stuff on your head. They test your brain waves. And I thought, okay, that's great. And I knew somehow it was meant to be in December when this happened. And they scheduled it for January 13th of all days. That's my birthday. So it was just random. And I go, oh, this is awesome. I actually got lost on the way going to the hospital and I was a little turned around, but I wanted to make it. Something told me, take this test. And I went in there and meditated for a half hour. Guess what? 2 weeks later, he gets the results and he says the same thing we were talking about before the call, that you have a dormant tissue. And we can't, I can't risk this having, you have to get on medication. I'm going to have to let the DMV know. I lost my license for 2 weeks in February this year. And I was just like meditating, saying, okay, this is my journey. What is this about? I went through another doctor, a personal practice doctor. I got it back. It was a real test though. I had so much PTSD, I would call it, seriously, like post-traumatic stress disorder, because I remember driving on a suspended license for 3 years in 2008. Because of my drinking, because of my epilepsy, and I just needed to go to work. I needed to go to the store. And I was doing that for 2 weeks again because of this. And it really had flashbacks, because when we say dormant tissue or I only have seizures, not epilepsy, I told that doctor, I don't have epilepsy anymore. He goes, well, you may have a seizure. And I can't, it was his butt, CYA, right? Cover your butt, cover your ass. So he had to do what he had to do. That's fine. I'm not mad at him, but it was the system that brought me there. The reason I'm bringing this up is for epileptics out there that are watching us, and hearing our story. We can relate in every way. Some people have a little bit of it here. Some people have a lot, and we want to be out here. So part of my story is being here to help others in my program of recovered coaching. So that's what I do.
And I think I should probably add here, because I think we talked about that before the film actually started rolling, that I said, oh, I'm happy to talk with you guys, but I don't have epilepsy. I only had brain surgery, but I still have seizures. And it was through having to look it up myself and see, oh, well, seizure disorder, with electroplating. In fact, I do have epilepsy. So it's this is my first day with it. And I got a flat tire. I don't think it's really.
That's a sign, huh? You got a little flat tire, need some more air. You do your life.
Yeah, it really deflated me.
Well, that's the thing, though. A lot of people, go through life in denial. And, some people go through their entire lives in denial. But, you have to, at some point, we have to learn to accept that, yes, I have epilepsy. And then we have, some people get very, when in the community, epilepsy community, when I've worked with many patients, a lot of people are angry and a lot of people are depressed. And you have to learn how to accept yourself for who you are and learn how to love yourself. And, it's not going to change. So, I always say the past is the past. We can't change the past, but we have to focus on the present and make, goals for our future. And, we can make better lives for ourselves, by setting short-term and long-term goals. But a lot of people tend to stay in that denial, because a lot of people don't want to have, if they accept it, then they have to face it. And a lot of people don't want to face the fact that they have epilepsy.
It's interesting you brought that up. Sorry to interject here, but at the age of, I guess I was 38, 39, I got a clean bill of health, right? And they said, your brain scan looks fine, the EEGs look fine, and so you got a clean bill of health. And I thought, oh, I guess that means my epilepsy's gone, right? So, and they took me off medication slowly but surely and everything else. So fast forward about 20 years, and I'm thinking, oh, I don't have any longer, I got the clean bill of health, only to find out, no, that just meant it's dormant, in remission, or hidden. So I talked to a couple specialist doctors, pharmacists, anybody, because I'm like, And I think I probably knew subconsciously that I did still have it. But when they said you got a clean bill of health, I'm like, woohoo, only to find out that, yeah, it just means, again, it's dormant, in remission, or hidden. And that was a real slap in the face. But again, subconsciously, I probably did know I still had it. So, but at this point, I don't take any medications for it. And I love that we're all talking, because I'm learning so much from all of you about great tips on, how to live a healthier life, because health is so important. That's why I love we have the group called Healthy.
Holistic epilepsy awareness and loving, transforming, and healing yourself. So we came up with that for Healthy. So go ahead.
Oh, that's great. I'm sorry. I imagine probably the listeners will know, but I don't, what is epilepsy 21 versus epilepsy something? What is it? Did you say epilepsy 21, Liz? Is that what you said?
Oh, I got epilepsy at 21.
At 21. Okay. So you're calling it epilepsy 21. Okay. I'm sorry.
No, that's me. Sorry.
That's a good mistake. I like that, because at 21, we become totally an adult. We can drink. We can, I was in the party phase at 21, and I had epilepsy and I had seizures in college, and I didn't want to change. That's a good analogy to look at. So there's no mistakes in life, but by saying that age is critical. And I was just like, I'm normal. I wanted to be normal and not have seizures. And my girlfriend at the time said I was waking up in bed all like stiff head and having a seizure, and it would freak her out. And you don't remember that. I just wake up to her look of, oh my God, the devil just looking at me like I was possessed. It was crazy.
Well, yeah. And at 21, it was interesting. I'd been to college, I'd traveled, I had my own place, my own car, great job, was going to school, yada, 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 yada. But I didn't really know what my thing in life was. And I was struggling to figure out, I have all this stuff, but, kind of what's my thing, and boom, within about a year, I think I'd had my first seizure. So, and I never even correlated the two. And I was working with a coach in Calgary. She said, what was going on in your life at the time when you had your first seizure? And I just went, oh, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do in life. And there was the first seizure within a year of that. Weird, very strange. Yeah.
My epilepsy took me on a totally different road, because the plans I had for myself were completely different, than who I turned out to be. And, I started, with dreams of becoming, working for this big corporation in New York, and being a professional of some sort, and drinking martinis on a Friday night, and buying expensive shoes and pocketbooks and all these other dreams that you have when you're in college and stuff like that. And, like I said, I worked for a, TV network. And when the producer saw me have a seizure, he had his associate come over and released me from my position. And that took me on a totally different road. I just, I didn't let it get to me in a sense. At that moment, I just walked out proudly, and I wasn't going to let it get to me, but it did get to me. And even to this day, it upsets me when I think about it, because, I always thought about what I could have been, if I didn't have the disorder. But we can't sit there, just like when someone passes and you grieve for that person, and you say, what if, you have to just, move on. And I realized, then I started, writing, and I started posting, and people were coming to me and asking me to write more. And I saw how the power, I say the wisdom of words could actually have such a huge effect on someone's life. And then that's when the light bulb went off, and I said, wow, maybe this is what my true passion in life is, not to be a big time, professional in the city, but to help others. And, when I wrote my first edition of the Epilepsy, You're Not Alone, it was when someone had sent me an email and said that they read my book, they got it from Barnes and Nobles, and it saved their life. And that's, they said that they followed my regimen, and it was so inspiring, and it changed their life, and they were no longer feeling the way they were. And that's when I realized this is my true passion, because I feel like when you help others, that's the biggest accomplishment you could have, is to help others. And for me, it was. And, that's when I realized that this is the road that I was meant to be on.
That's wonderful. And Susie, are you seeing the same thing, of course, all over the world? Are you getting connection?
I'm now getting called because I think my car is ready.
Oh, right. See, you're resetting your life on day one.
Oh, yes, I am. Hold on for 1 second. I'm just going to mute myself and take care of this. I'm sorry.
We'll connect back. And Stacey, I love that, because your story, all of our stories are amazing in one way, but we have to look at it like a learning process and be able to grow from there instead of living in the past. That's what really changed me. I lived in the past for so long, coulda, shoulda, woulda. And I love when Tony Robbins says, should have, and then you should all over yourself. And I should all over myself a lot.
Yeah.
And I was like feeling, I don't say suicidal, but there were times when drinking to escape will be suicidal.
Well, you used it as a coping mechanism, like many people do, because you kind of like, it takes the edge off, and it kind of puts you in a different zone. And, people use it as a coping mechanism, because when you get drunk or you're under the influence, you don't no longer have to live and face your problems. It puts your mind in a totally different zone. So it's an escape mode, and many people use it as an escape mode. But then you have to say, okay, am I a casual drinker, or am I doing this to cope with my problems? And that's the difference. When you're starting to use alcohol or drugs to cope with your problems, then there's a problem. And, many people do that because, it's an easy way out. But the hardest thing is to face our problems and to actually figure out solutions to overcome those problems and to move on. And I think that the biggest problem, the hardest thing is facing the truth, facing, where in life, what made you who you are today, and what caused you to be addicted to drugs or addicted to alcohol. And it always stems back to our childhood. Everything always stems back to our childhood. But it's the hardest thing is facing the truth and having to be faced with your imperfections and to accept them and to make changes, because nobody wants to be faced with their imperfections in life. It's the hardest thing to do is to face where you've gone wrong, or the people who hurt you in life. You having to stem back to all these painful things that we kind of bury, most people, and push down. I think so.
Face it in order to erase it, right, Liz?
Yeah.
So from Epilepsy 21, her new group. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But especially at 21, especially at a young age, you're like, I don't want to change. I have to face, but we do, Stacey, we have to face it in order to erase it. What do you think, Liz?
Yeah, totally. Because again, I was at that stage where, young, and I'd traveled college and had a great job going to school and my own place, and, everything was great, but it was like, okay, what's the next step here? So it's kind of, it was an interesting sort of thing. And then to have a seizure, you know, shortly after. But one thing, Stacy, you just said something, and I want to mention, years ago, I was working for a coaching company up here in Canada, and the lady that owned it was fabulous. And so I was doing one-on-one coaching with her, and I went to work for the company, and her and I did one-on-one coaching, and we're having a conversation, and she says, wow, really sounds to me like what you want to do is help others with epilepsy. And I'm like, yes, exactly. So I kept working for the coaching company. She's fabulous. And then I started to build my business, right? Sort of shortly after that, build a business slowly but surely. But it was through getting coaching with her that I realized that what I wanted to do was to really help others. I think I knew that anyway, but it was through, she goes, why don't you become a coach for people with epilepsy?
Right.
And so that was the turning point of me starting my business around that. So huge shout out to Crystal.
Yeah. And Stacy, that's how I found you. Remember, I just messaged you in 2018. I was Googling epilepsy coaching just to see who's out there or see if I came up. I was kind of doing the SEO thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, who's Stacy? What's this? And you got all these books and everything. I'm like, I'm not alone. There's somebody else out there that went through a lot more in different ways. Family, life. We all have different lives, but different routes, you know, and so it's really good for us to all connect.
Yeah, you know, I had it since the age of 5, and I have to say, for the longest time, I was in denial. And if someone said go left, I would go right, because I had to prove that I could do it. I was the normal person, you know. So for years I was very rebellious, and I did not want to listen to anybody. You know, they said, you know, seizures when you sunbathe could, you know, cause seizures. Well, I would go out there, I would put aluminum foil in the 80s and 90s. I would oil myself to the top to the bottom. I'd sit there and I'd have seizures, and then I turn over on my back, you know, and I keep going, you know, and I just didn't care at that point, you know. And it was, you know, and I didn't even realize how many seizures I was having until I got married. And my husband said, you had a seizure last night. You had a seizure last night. I'm like, I did, you know. And you know, I got to a point, you know, where, especially I think it was when they released me from my job. That was the wake up call, you know. And I accepted, you know, I finally got out of that denial stage, and I accepted who I was, and I learned to love myself. And I think the hardest thing is looking in that mirror and saying, I love who I see. And so many people don't want to look in a mirror, just like some people don't want to go on a scale and see their weight. You know, it was like, I didn't want to see that face, because I didn't like who I represented. And I had to get over that, you know. I had to get over that and actually learn how to love myself and move on, you know. And it was when I wrote that first book. When I was in college, I was constantly having seizures, because I was doing late night study and never sleeping. And when I had wrote a letter into the Epilepsy Foundation, and I said, you know, I don't know if my dream is to finish college, but I don't know if I can do it. I said, does anyone have any stories to share how they cope with epilepsy? And that's when I got hundreds of letters. And that's when I finally realized I wasn't alone, because at that point, like you said, nobody talked about it. And if you went in the library, there was only a couple of books, maybe 4 or 5 books written by doctors. And if you weren't a doctor, you couldn't understand the medical terminology they were trying to explain in the books. It was useless. And those letters helped me. They actually guided me and gave me such inspiring information that it actually helped me get through college. Because if it wasn't for all those people writing to me and sharing their stories, I wouldn't have learned. And I also realized that people feel sorry for themselves. There's a lot of people out there that have it a lot worse. I was in trial groups, and there were people having 60, 90 to 300 seizures a day. Could you imagine that? You know, so when you think about it, you know, when you're angry that you have something, you think about, you know, there are a lot of people with terminal illnesses. Think of those people that have, you know, 60, 90 or 300 seizures a day, they're not living life. They're not coping. They can't, and so then sometimes you have to look at yourself and say, you know what, I may not be perfect, but I don't have it that bad, in a sense, and I don't believe in the word perfect, because perfect, that shouldn't even be in a vocabulary. That shouldn't even be, in a conversation, because there's no such thing as perfect. Nobody is perfect. We all have our flaws, just some people are better hiding it than others.
I'm going to add a song right here in the video. So watch this. And it's added there. It's called Perfectly Imperfect. He has lyrics in here that I just heard about a year ago. But when he said that, I felt the same way. I've always said impossible to I'm possible, impatient to I'm impractical to I'm practical. And impatient is the biggest one. Imbalance to I'm balanced. But impatient and I'm not perfect. Imperfect, what? To I'm perfect. Like perfectly perfect, but we're not. There's no perfection, just accepting imperfection as what is.
Exactly.
And it really helped me to, I was going to mention Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer. And when they talked about loving yourself, Louise Hay talked a lot about that. And I saw her 3 times, and it was amazing to hear in her 90s, she was speaking, talking about how much problems she had, drugs, sexual abuse, growing up, this hard life. And she had to start loving herself and looking in that mirror, like you said. And I remember at 21 years old, now that you're talking about this, seriously, epilepsy 21, I was at least 21, 22 in college, and I had my first grand mal seizure in the library. Now, I had a high school football injury at 17, but then 4 years later, I wasn't taking medication. I didn't realize I had seizures still, because I was probably having them at night. And I had a seizure in the library at Chico State in Northern California here, and I was partying hard. It was like all the time, and this was a Saturday morning. And I looked up, and the paramedics are there, and all these ghostly faces are around me looking at me. And they said, you have epilepsy. And I was like, oh, total denial, right? Because when we're 21, we're like you said, you're like flipping over on the beach, having seizures. And I'm just like, no, that's not me. And they put me on medication. What does it say on all those bottles? Do not mix with alcohol.
Yeah.
And for the next freaking 20 years, I didn't listen to that.
No. And most people don't. It's very hard to change your lifestyle when you're used to living a certain way, because with epilepsy, you have to change your lifestyle. You have to have a specific lifestyle, because, many people get angry because the doctors give them a pill and then they expect this medication to control their seizures. Well, unless you create a healthy lifestyle and work within your limitations, you're not going to get those seizures controlled or decreased. Unless you have to work within your limitations. Everyone knows what triggers their seizures. If you pay attention to your body, you're going to have an idea of certain things that trigger your seizures. You're going to look at the calendar. You might see, the certain times of the month you might have a seizure, or if you eat a lot of sodium, your body gets, really high in sodium, your water count gets really high. That could trigger a seizure. Stress could trigger. There's so many things. But if that certain things trigger a majority of your seizures, then you have to start making changes, and even with what we put in our bodies, the foods, if your body is working really hard to break these foods that don't agree with you, and you're starting to store toxins in your body, you're actually, putting yourself in jeopardy of having a seizure, because people don't realize, but, if your body doesn't break it, it stores it. And if you're storing toxins, foods that have a lot of junk in them, you're putting toxins in your body, and you're causing stress on your body. Your body's becoming sluggish. It can't work as well. And you're jeopardizing your body to have seizures. There's so many different things, but you have to pay attention to your body. You have to understand what triggers you, and then you have to create a productive lifestyle in order to help your seizures.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think I was being super rebellious after they told me that, because I continued working, continued going to school, continued partying, traveling, and everything else. And if I'd lose my license, I would, ride my bike or take a bus. And I think for a long time, they said, don't go rock climbing. So I did. I went rock climbing, but it was over water in case, whatever. So and they said, don't do this, and don't go skydiving. And I'm like, I'm not sure I really want to do that anyway. So again, I think you get this little rebellious side, or I'll be okay. But yet I was pushing the envelope, like, working, studying, partying, living on my own, all that. And then I was
Yeah.
starting to have seizures that were Saturday and Sunday mornings between 9 and 10. And after a few, you go, okay, maybe it's alcohol, overtired, pushed myself too far, dehydration, whatever. Or wait a second, there's tequila involved in a lot of that partying, and I might have a seizure, after that. So, and it's a wake-up call. You got to come out of denial and take care of yourself, and look at the patterns and what you've done. And when I look back, I just think I was so rebellious, or I don't know what my attitude was, but it was denial. I don't know. It's just interesting, right? And so then one day you go, wait a sec, the healthier I get, the less seizures I'm having. And
I think it's wanted to be normal, like, trying to, that, like I said before, that word doesn't exist anyway, because nobody's normal. And, but you want to be like the way society thinks we want to be normal. I want to be just like that other person next to me. If that person can drink, I want to be able to drink too. Why can't I do it? And, you end up, putting yourself in jeopardy of doing something really bad to yourself. But I think for the longest time too, anything that someone said I couldn't do, I did. I did the rock climbing too. And in one of my jobs, that was a requirement. They wanted to make sure you were physically fit. I climbed all the way to the top, and, should I have done that? Probably not. But, I wanted to prove that I could be just like everybody else.
I call it achieving normality. And I wrote about that because I wanted to be normal again with alcohol too and epilepsy. But I wanted to have just 2 drinks and be able to leave the bar. I wanted to have just not be able to drink one day, and not have seizures and not worry about it, not take medication and just be like, oh, that's fine, no medication. And it's just times that we get in our mind, the old you versus the new you. And the new you has to awaken with that spirit to grow. And I did not want to listen. There was a mouthful of excuses in between the connecting dots of thoughts. And the old mind, the ego said, you can drink, you can just have 2. It would turn into 2 pitchers, instead of 2 beers. And I was wasted. And then the next day have the seizure problems, have auras. I had a lot of thousands of small moles and just kind of those weird things that people are looking at you and then it goes away. Are you okay?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, oh, I'm fine. I gotta go. You can't even talk straight. And they're like, wow, what's wrong with him?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to admit it.
Do you know, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
No. I was just, when he said that, he just reminded me, like when I first met my mother-in-law before I got married, I used to have a lot of focal seizures, and she's a really nice girl, but she has this, she just like stares into space a lot, and it was like, and it just reminded me when you said that, with the auras,
It's interesting because in elementary school, the teachers, used to call meetings with my parents, and they would go like, she stares off into space. And they were saying all these things to my parents. And it was about 5 years ago, I went, wait a sec, those were seizures, or they could have been seizures,
They probably were.
Yeah. And so I just found that really interesting that they were like, oh, she stares off into space. And they thought maybe I had some kind of a learning problem or something. Which may have been at the time, but that probably was the beginning for me. And then at 21, full on. So,
well, that's one of the main symptoms is just staring off in space. That's a focal seizure. When you start to gaze, your eyes become a little glass and you're not responsive. That's a focal seizure, and, it's weird because like 70% of the cases of epilepsy are unknown. It just happens. And I don't even, to this day, they can't even find my scar tissue because when my seizures were really bad, I considered brain surgery and I went to Chicago, and when they did all the tests, they could not locate any scar tissue. Even, the doctors in the city that work with me, I had the top, epileptologists working with me, and they could not locate the scar tissue. They figured with my encephalitis, it traveled throughout my brain, caused such minute scar tissue that it's undetectable, and that's what caused my epilepsy. So I have scar tissue probably, they're assuming, they don't know for sure, but probably throughout my brain, because I could take all different types of seizures from focal to grand mal seizures. It all depends.
Wow. Well, this was wonderful. It looks like
Yeah, I don't know if Susie got back on. Is Susie still there?
no, she didn't know. This was
Gotta get
wonderful.
back on
I
the call.
love these conversations. They're amazing. Like just so much great information from all of you. We got to keep this going.
Yeah, and you know what? I've noticed that a lot of people have stayed on a very long time to listen to our videos, and we should just put it out there once again. If people have questions and they just want to ask one of us a question, or they have something in general they'd like to, find out, because I tend to get questions from a lot of people, that they just don't, they don't understand the disorder, or they hear something and they wonder if something like that could actually help them. We, all of us would be more than happy, I think,
Oh yeah.
to
And a loved
answer
one,
any
for
questions.
example, loved ones, the one lady contacted me, she's the wife, and her husband has them all the time at night. And so she has serious PTSD from that. And she
Oh, wow.
can't sleep. She's always touching him, feeling him, like sleeps with her hand on him. So when he starts having a seizure, she knows, and it just freaks her out. So people are affected by this, and they're both retired, and they expect. I had a call if that messed it up or something. But you have a disease, that a dis-ease, and you also affecting others. They don't live in ease at
Well,
all.
that's the big thing. I didn't realize till later on. A caregiver goes through a lot of stress. We don't realize it, but the people who watch over us and take care of us and make sure that we're okay, they're going through just as much stress in a different way, because they're seeing the people they love, suffer from this disorder, and they are powerless. They can't put a magic wand over you and make you feel better. They see how you suffer, and the only thing they can do is make sure you're safe and comfort you and be there to support you. But that's a very difficult thing. And I didn't realize till later on how it affected my entire family, especially my kids and my husband. My husband would hear the slightest noise and he'd jump up, because he thought maybe I was having a seizure. Or my kids too. I would be like pondering maybe and thinking about something. And then my kids are like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Because they would be afraid, that I was having a seizure, so it affects people. It really affects people. And, I think maybe that's something we could talk about, is the caregivers, because, what in our next conversations in the future, because they go through a lot, and it's very hard for them. And I have friends that their son had epilepsy and was taking seizures when he was young, and then he stopped. And it was very stressful for them to see their child going through this.
Yeah, and it is tough. I know somebody I know said that after they witnessed a seizure, they never got over it. Like
Yeah.
it was such an impact on them to witness this that, they said it took years and years. Well, they said they actually never got over it. It was just that stressful for them, or traumatic.
I
Yeah.
think I think that my kids never got over it. I think it really, they understand. I wrote a kids book to try to explain to them, it started out with me just drawing little stick figures on a piece of paper to explain to them what was going on. But, even like when I got my license back and I was able to drive, I remember my kids were in the back and I was going to take them to Toys R Us. That was the first thing I was going to do when I got my license back. And I remember my daughter, as soon as I started driving, she let out a scream because she was so scared that mommy might have a seizure. Even though I was controlled, she just, in her brain, she remembers me having seizures and the fear of me having seizures, and even to this day, like I said, my kids, they see me pondering or thinking, right away they run over to me. They hear noise in the bathroom, right away they come in, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm either doing something where I'm making noise, rearranging something," but they're just scared.
That was the most annoying question to me too. Even after brain surgery, when I was living with my parents, my mom would say, looking at me all the time like that too. "You okay?" I'm like,
Oh,
"Yeah,
it annoys the hell out of me
yeah,
I know
why?"
it,
It's
I
like
know it's
it's
with
like
good intention, but it annoys the hell out of me. I'm like, "Well, just stop asking me," I said.
You know what it
Yeah,
reminds me
it's
of?
funny.
Did you drink? No, leave me alone. I'm fine.
Yeah, I know when they say to you, "Are you okay?" And you go, "Yeah," and they go, "Oh, are you having one of those?" No, and just sort of, you're right. Like Stace, like you say, you're just thinking and you're staring off into space or just pondering, and people think, "Oh, they're having a seizure or something," which is sweet. You're right, but it's
annoying at the same time. You just want to be, if I have a problem, I'll let you know,
I work in
Yeah.
assisted living too, so it's kind of like that. And you mentioned caregivers a lot too. It's like being an elderly in a bed, and then your whole life has changed. You were active one week, and the next week you're in bed and you're bedridden. So it's really hard for them, and that's kind of how epilepsy can be too. We're not bedridden, but we're house ridden in a sense. We have to stay home or we can't drive, and it's just like going through a really bad problem, really bad time in life.
Well, I didn't drive for 15 years while they were trying to get my seizures controlled. And I felt like I was imprisoned in my own home. And when I spoke to people that got their license taken away or they were asked to stop driving, they felt the same way. When you can't, go even just to the store, you feel kind of imprisoned. And when I was caretaking for some family members, they felt the same way. They didn't have epilepsy, but they were older and they couldn't drive anymore and they felt imprisoned, and nobody likes to ask for help. I don't like to ask for help, and it would be so upsetting to say, can you take me to the grocery store? And even though I know people didn't mind, it bothered me to have to ask people because I wanted to be able to do it myself. And with older people and other people, like you said, you live in assisted living, you work in assisted living, these people remember how they once were in a younger age, and they see how they are now. And I guarantee you it's very depressing. I know that my family members remembered before they got sick how they once were, and now they see themselves declining. And it's very upsetting when you see yourself declining, or you can remember beforehand, probably before you were 21 and before you had your seizures, how you felt and how, productive you were. And if you take medications, a lot of those medications slow people down and can have side effects. And people, you have to live with these changes, and it's very difficult.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Part
Well,
of life too. Oh, go ahead, Liz.
No, I was going to say, this is amazing. We definitely have to continue these. So much great information and experiences that others are going to want to hear, that they're not alone, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Get Susie on here again too when she's all charged up again and doesn't have a flat tire and things happen in life. And also I'm going to show you something I just came out with and just made, and I patent this quote even now. I'm going through a patent process, but turn the FUs to thank yous. I got this as a cell phone holder, and I came up with this about 7 years ago. Look at, put the middle finger in there and you're like, hey,
oh, that's funny.
that.
Yeah.
So I say, thank you. And people are loving that so far. If you need one, let me know. There's a link down below. But I want to be able to market this idea, the message. That's what I'm writing about. Turn your FUs to thank yous, because I was with epilepsy. I was with alcohol, and I was just F this, F that, F you. And I finally went, thank you. And so to be able to be thankful for what we experienced, 15 years of not driving, not being able to drink, right, in college, or things that happened to us. So we want to be here as coaches and speakers and authors. And as I mentioned about Susie changing my life with that book, those little seeds that we plant everywhere are going to help everybody. So subscribe, like, and share on all our channels here, everybody, and let us know any feedback.
And I think gratitude and positive thinking is what gets people through, a lot of these hard times. I think it's very important that people learn to have gratitude in life, and have to be positive. I don't think I would have survived if it wasn't, for me teaching myself how to be positive and look at the positive aspects instead of the negative aspects of life.
Two entities. Yeah, I love that too. Me teaching myself. So me, like the heart, teaching myself to reprogram. It's just really weird when we say it, but weird spells wired, and we wire ourselves differently. So we say, I have to change myself, and we change for a while, and then it's a battle though, right? So many years.
Oh yeah. And I also say it all starts from the heart. People think it comes from the brain, but it doesn't come from the brain. It comes from the heart, and we send those messages to the brain, you know. So it's really reconstructing, you know, your heart and listening to what your heart tells you. Because I always believe that, you know, our body sends us messages, but we have to pay attention and, you know, listen to what our those messages are.
Well, you guys, this has been wonderful. We've got 3 minutes left on, it's just about an hour. So I will send this out to all of you guys. So.
And can I mention one thing before we go? So my 3rd edition of Epilepsy, You're Not Alone, just came out. I wrote that book 2 decades ago, the 1st edition, and then I had upgraded it, and now I upgraded it again, and it teaches people, it has life stories of people with epilepsy, what they went through and how they cope with epilepsy, and I took the most positive letters and put them in the book. And I also talk about my regimen and how I retrained my brain and how I retrained my life. And so right now it's on Amazon and it's for free. They're running a promotion, so if you want to download it for free, it's on Amazon. And you know, it's actually hit #1 on Amazon for brain disorders. So you know, if someone's interested in that, you know, the book is there and it has a lot of valuable information.
I'll put the link right here, so just click on this area. So just click on this area and they'll go to that Amazon page and be able to click on it, and then the information's right here as well. So I'll kind of add that to it, and that way they can find it. That's wonderful. Every 7 years, that 7-year shift. So look at that, 7, 14, 21. So 20 years later, 20, 21 years later, you're coming out with another one. So that's wonderful. Keep on growing.
There's no need to explain these things. We were late just to arrive as the sun climbed through the sky. There's no need to explain these things. We rejoicing not to know. Let the music fill our soul. We got to be free. Free, we've got to be free. To be free, free, we've got to be free. Oh no, no. Well, I met with Uncle, and he played his drum, and all of his daughters, they sang his word.